Hi, today I'm going to talk about 3 books that can make you be a conscious parent and how they helped me transform my own motherhood journey from struggle and overwhelm and feeling exhausted into being a conscious, present, centered, calm, confident mom. So, 3 books, I'm going to get right to it. Parenting from the Inside Out, Dr. Dan Siegel and Mary Hartzell. Next book, Hold On to Your Kids, Why Parents Need to Matter More Than Peers. And The Conscious Parent by Dr. Shefali Tasbury. So here's the thing. Why do you want to be a conscious parent? What's the benefit? You might be asking yourself. Here it is. Don't you want to have a relationship with your child that you're thriving, your kids are flourishing, there's mutual respect, there's communication, you're actually teaching life skills as well as sharing a life with your children, enjoying them just the way they are, knowing that they will grow and develop? Well, it helps a whole lot if you understand who you are. If you let these books, right? If you let these books transform you, that's my number one tip. There are tons of parenting books out there. I've read a lot of them. There are lots of books specific to specific problems in parenting, as well as like things you're particularly challenged with your children. High sensitivities, ADHD, Down syndrome, any number of things that affect your relationship with your child. So I'm not talking about specific things in our parenting journey. I'm talking about an overarching umbrella of being a conscious parent so that we can connect more deeply with our children's essence. In order to connect with your children's essence, though, you have to understand your essence. You have to get to know you. All of these books, these 3 books, speak to a similar main theme, which is understanding yourself, knowing what kind of attachment and attunement and skills do you need for your best self to grow and evolve. These are not quick fix books, right? These are long-term engaging with who are you, what do you want, and how you can learn alongside your children. I'm going to share some tips from these books and how they specifically changed my motherhood and had my kids show up completely who they are, right? They were able to show up and show me their best and their worst without my reaction. I'm Christy Conradie, if we haven't met yet. I'm the host of this channel, Motherhood Made Simple. I'm also the creator of the Be Meaningful Journey, which is really a journey into the self. And all of what I've learned, not just in these 3 books, but hundreds of books, from ancient wisdom to modern science to practical motherhood tips, all came down to these 46 meaningful to-dos that you as a mom can use and grow and evolve into your best version of yourself. And the best thing is, you can use these same things with your children. It's a win-win, a mutually beneficial experience. So that's the Be Meaningful Journey. Links are in the description below. You can check out more. But let's get to this. The number one thing you want to understand about books and reading is you really want the book to transform you in some way, right? We don't want just more information. We want to be transformed, especially in our motherhood journey, so that we can respond more to what our children are needing. This isn't straightforward, right? Sounds like it is, it's not. What we think our children need are not always necessarily what the rest of the world says they need. This is where it gets really nuance. This is where it gets a bit muddled. This is where conscious parenting really helps. Because if you're more conscious, more awake, more tuned in with yourself, you will be naturally able to tune in with your children's unconsciousness. Because even though they come in and they're living in the present moment and they're much more conscious than we are, they don't have a way to communicate that consciousness to us directly. They need time for their brain to grow and evolve and learn how to experience what they're experiencing in words that can communicate to you. That takes a while. But we as moms can learn how to attune into our children's, what I like to call kind of their soul language or their essence language, when we take the time to learn about our own soul language and what do we need. And here's a hint. What our children need, we also need. They're not separate. It's this unique symbiotic relationship that I've discovered with my own parenthood, motherhood journey, is that every time my child was frustrated, stuck, acting up, making me frustrated, whatever, right? It was usually an unmet need. Couldn't see it. Why? Because I didn't recognize the need in myself. So I couldn't see it in my child. When we can't see that dynamic, we then look at the world for what to do. How come my child's not doing it like everyone else? And that sets off a spiral of make wrong. And we often, not intentionally, but we often discount our child's experience because we don't know, one, what they're experiencing, and two, we don't know how to deal with that experience. So we have to learn to deal with it within ourselves. How? These books in 3 different ways, although they all interrelate, help you become more in tune with what's going on within inside you so that you can attune to your child's needs in more and more wonderful ways, right? That actually bring out the best in them. And your children feel felt. They feel understood. And that's really the key. Our children most want to be understood by us, want to be accepted by us, even though they may not be accepting of themselves. They may have parts of themselves that are just coming into their awareness, and they might not know how to deal with some of their own thoughts. They don't know how to deal with their emotions. So, as Dr. Tasberry says, you have to raise yourself first. You have to evolve so that you can then raise your children up. So this is where these 3 books come in handy. So let us talk here about parenting from the inside out first, because this book references Dr. Dan Siegel's work, right? And then The Conscious Parent sort of puts these 2 books together in a really unique way. So these 3 books all interconnect and help you in slightly different ways, but in a very lovely, symbiotic, synergistic way. So parenting from the inside out, the main piece I want to share here is it says how a deeper self-understanding can help you raise children who thrive. So for me as a mom, I never understood that the parenting journey was going to require as much growth and development in me as it was required in my children. It just, either I never heard this, it wasn't talked about, or I just was oblivious. Don't know which one, or possibly all 3 were influencing that way of thinking. Because I was coming from, I'm a successful person, I've always achieved things, I've always been able to handle whatever life was giving me, right? And then children came along and all that went out the window. It was like nothing I knew was going to impact the struggle. It wasn't that the things I was doing well weren't being picked up and my kids were doing well in those same areas, But the places where I needed to grow the most, guess where they showed up? Problems with my child that I couldn't deal with. Why does this keep happening? What's wrong with me? How come this child does this and no one else's child is doing that, right? This constant back and forth, self-doubt, not understanding was creating the friction. And that's where being a conscious parent and educating yourself on what these authors tell you will help you tremendously. One of the things that's a key theme through all this is talking about attunement and attachment. And there's many different theories to this, and there's different layers to this. I won't go into all those details here, but I will share with you what your attachment style is and was to your parents will contribute to and affect what kind of a style of attachment your children will have with you. It's just the way it works. It's not bad or wrong. It's just called our conditioning. We parent from our conditioned automatic what we know, right? But really, parenting successfully comes out of connecting to the present moment and engaging with your child and learning new information. This is why it's so important for us moms to be educated in ways of the world, how life works, where are we triggered, where do we need to grow, how can we be our best, just as much, right? We need that information and growth in learning just as much as we need to help our children read and write and do math and make friends and learn how to share and learn how to play safely and etc., right? Watch when you're crossing the street, look both ways. Just as important, just as important. So I want to encourage you to read and enjoy the journey of educating yourself because it will free you up. And the joy that comes from a freed up parent connecting to a freed up child is indescribable. And this is what we ultimately want to experience more of in motherhood. It's not always like that, right? Just because I'm more conscious than I was when I first had my children doesn't mean I do everything perfect. I don't. I still, because my children are still growing and learning, right? And will be until the day we depart. So I want to keep up and I want to keep learning and educating myself so I can connect more with my children in today's world, not the world I grew up in, because that world is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And we never had anything like this talked about, right? My parents, my mom says, I never learned about those things. It just wasn't even in the realm of parenting for her. It never even occurred to her, right? So we, as conscious modern day moms living in the 21st century, can educate ourselves and learn and grow. So one of the things I want to share that deeply transformed my life from this book particularly was an understanding of an incident that happened when my son was first born in 2002. What I didn't know then that I figured out after I read this book, and hopefully maybe you can see and relate to it yourself, is when my child was first born, he clung to me, like constantly holding on to me. He was never soothed by anybody else. You put him down, he'd be fussy, he'd be agitated, he'd be on the go, right? You put him up next to me, he'd calm down. It's like he couldn't regulate himself outside of me. But I didn't know this was happening at the time. Okay. I'm just telling you the experience of what the external was. Internally, what am I feeling? I'm not doing this right. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my son? How come he can't be, like with other people? How come he can't just play by himself and do all these things? Like there's something wrong with me. That's because what I didn't know then was my child was actually trying to communicate to me something that I was unaware of in myself And it was just showing up in this kind of behavior, this clingy, attached, I need you, mom kind of behavior. Was what he was needing was this soothing, this peace, this trying to understand his world as an infant, was the same thing I was needing. I was needing some kind of soothing and peace as a new mom. But I didn't know that I needed that, right? Because I thought, well, I can handle this. I'm smart and educated. I know what I'm doing. But it didn't help me to understand that unconscious way our kids relate to us. And why I bring this up, because ever since I had that moment of awareness of going, oh, my child was just trying to communicate something to me that I was unconscious of. Once I started to get more conscious of my own thoughts and feelings, stop making myself wrong, and really start to understand that my children are going to show me exactly where I need to grow. Then parenting became more fun. Motherhood became more simple. It seemed to flow. It didn't mean it wasn't frustrating or overwhelming. No, it still was. But I didn't attach the same meaning to what was happening. It was more, okay, what's needed? What do I need to learn? How can we look and work on this together? This book also talks about the brain. Number one thing we really need to understand as moms, helped me tremendously. When I understood how the brain forms experiences, and he does this in a simple way, right? We don't have to be brain scientists to understand some basics about the brain and emotional regulation and forward or thought thinking, which is the prefrontal cortex, right? The more rational part of our thinking, which, by the way, our children do not have yet because that part of the brain is not formed. I wish I would have known that when my kids were younger and couldn't regulate themselves. And I'm thinking, well, how come you can't do this when I tell you to do these things, right? It's because they can't. Physically, they can't. That's another topic for another day, but just know, learning about the brain is so helpful. That's what you can get out of this book, is some insights into how your children are actually communicating with you, realizing that it's you that has to learn so that then you can give your child what the child needs. That's what makes it more peaceful. So next book, Hold On to Your Kids, Why Parents Need to Matter More Than Peers. Again, he goes into all the different attachment theories. What happens when we don't attach to our children with secure attachment, and then helps you look at how were you parented? What was your attachment style? Because conditioned ways repeat. So if you did not have a great attachment with your own parents, chances are that you're performing and acting in those same ways when your children actually need a different way. So it's not like your child's trying to misbehave. It's not like your child is trying to push all your buttons. It's just that's the only way it shows up in a context for us to gain awareness and insight. And then you get to be the scientist instead of the, why is this happening to me? Angry, upset, frustrated, because you can understand, okay, there's something I don't know. I need to understand. I need to tune into me so then I can tune into my child. That takes a bit of a process. It doesn't happen like this. That's why I ask you to read the books. Start to engage with yourself differently. This also prepared me for when my children went through middle school and high school, because when peers start to become a bigger influence, I realized, oh my gosh, the stuff I was reading in this book was so helpful to guide me when things were happening that I read about. And then I learned how I could be a better mom and communicate in conscious ways what I wanted for my children and help them as they navigated friendships and peer relationships and all the pressure that goes on with kids these days. So difficult, right? Even much more so than when my kids were little. The impact of attention, right? Our children really and he even talks about this in the book, about the power that we've lost as parents isn't power over our kids to do what we want. It's the power of attention. Our kids are so distracted and they're tuned into other things instead of tuned into us. So we have to do a better job, a more conscious job of creating ways that our children actually want to attach to us and want to put their attention with us. And you can do this. It's in the book, right? Last book I want to talk about here is The Conscious Parent. She's done amazing work and she has so many videos out as well speaking to all this, but the book gives you so many great details about different aspects of our parenting and how it really is us. We need to change so that our children can show up in the ways we want them to. We need to be the change we want to see. This is another reason why I created all these meaningful to-dos, because each one of these to-dos is like 5 or 6 books, right? Just like I'm giving you 3 books here. All of the material that you learn in here sort of got synthesized and then broken down and then categorized into these meaningful to-dos that help you as a mom live in the present moment and with a wanted experience. And as Dr. Shefali says, her main thing here is we don't have control over our kids or their behavior or anything like that, but we do have control over the conditions that we create for experiences, wanted experiences, to show up. That's it. Now, that's big though, because if you can focus on creating the conditions needed for what you want to show up in your children by you first experiencing it for yourself, then your children will naturally start to assimilate and attune to you and go to you and cooperate with you, because unconsciously there's not a lot of friction. Consciously, you've been clearing the space and creating the conditions, getting your own self and your own behaviors in order so that you don't project them onto your child, which then your child rebels against, again, unconsciously. And then you're struggling. Why isn't this working? What do I need to do? I'm so overwhelmed. I can't do this. Nothing I'm doing is working. You know, all those feelings. It's just because there's a mismatch in energy and need. And this book really helps you understand that in a deeper, more profound way. And she gives you so many ways that you can do this for yourself as well. And I, again, took so many of these lessons and put them into all these different meaningful to-dos that you can do for yourself. And then as your children are ready, they'll come to you. Hey, Mom, can you help me with this? I'm struggling with this. Hey, Mom, do you know how I could achieve this? Because this isn't working for me. This is when, after doing your own education, after growing yourself, after having the conditions that work for you to thrive, you can then teach your children. You already have the information. You're already prepared and equipped. Just because you're changing and evolving and doing things in a different way doesn't mean your child is ready for that same behavior to become part of their everyday life. It's a process, but you first have to create it within yourself, and then you can create it with your children. That's how it works. That's what makes motherhood simple, right? That's what we can do as moms. So we haven't met. I'm Christy Conradie. I hope you'll come back for more wisdom that I share in many different ways of how I became a conscious parent, got off of conditioned living, and really started to communicate and connect with my children at a deeper, more essence-based level because that has helped them thrive in today's world with all the craziness that's going on, and really understand who they are, and currently learning how to meet their own needs with ease, grace, and abundance. And that was my biggest job I wanted to do as a mom, was to make sure that they knew who they were, that they knew how to get their needs met, and that they loved and accepted themselves. The way I did that was I had to do that same thing for myself. And then it became easy, simpler. So that's what I have today. In the description box, there's some links to the Be Meaningful Journey and the cards. There's a card deck if you want to check that out, as well as I will put links to these 3 wonderful books to help you in your parenting journey and become a conscious parent, little by little by little, but it makes the biggest difference in your motherhood experience. So bye for now.